Alright folks, sorry about there being such a long gap between tier ranking videos. I actually did record the Fantasy Tropes one, but so the port that I have this mic plugged into, or I should say had this mic plugged into when I recorded that one, had some issues with it, which meant even though the little thing I look at that shows me that the waveform is fine, yeah, when I tried to play it back, it sounded like, well, honestly, it sounded like this. Yeah, that's awful, right? Yeah, so I couldn't use that, and I'd recorded for like 45 minutes on that, and because my short-term memory is not great at the best of times, I couldn't remember why I chose to put some of those tropes where I put them. Maybe I'll try again at some other point, I don't know. So, still planning to do the Pixar one next, as voted on by my Twitter followers, and then after that, the letterboxd.com top 40. But there's still like one more Pixar movie that I want to actually watch before I do that. So, in the interim, Weird Al Yankovic's discography. I did not make this list here, so there are some things that probably should have been included that aren't. I mean, they included several of his singles on here, but not others. Like, they didn't even have his other, Portugal the Man remix on here. But, you know, whatever. I'll work with what I got. And we're going to go with the standard tier ranking thing here. S tier being superb, and then A, B, C, and D being like, you know, the American grading system. I'm just going to go ahead, spoiler alert. Spoiler alert, even though I haven't actually made the list yet. Nothing's going in the D tier. Because the D tier is reserved for the bad stuff. And there really aren't any bad Weird Al albums, or even really bad Weird Al songs. There are ones that are just kind of okay, and then there are others that haven't particularly aged well. But, I mean, Al himself will tell you that those songs haven't aged well. In fact, I could be remembering wrong, but I think he actually has several songs that he just will not perform live anymore. Anywho, I mentioned the Portugal the Man remix thing there. I'm going to go ahead and start with the singles before I get into the album, since that'll be the quickest. Hamilton Polka goes into the C tier. It's well put together. It's just I'm kind of not as big on Hamilton as I was when I first heard it. There are a lot of reasons for that, but I'm not going to get into that because we're already running the risk of this video being long as it is. Headline news. Still pretty funny. Parts of it I don't think have aged all that well, but if you don't remember that one, that was the parody of by Crash Test Dummies. And yeah, if I explain a lot of these, I'm going to be here forever. So if you're not a Weird Al fan and you're watching this, you are going to get lost. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that now. Spy Hard is a sort of style parody of James Bond theme songs from a movie that, I mean, I liked it at the time, but it wasn't that great. But it's okay. It's well put together, certainly, but it doesn't particularly. It's not something I go out of my way to listen to. Honestly, it wasn't something I went out of my way to listen to even when it was new. I do kind of love the bit in the opening credits, though, because you have Weird Al singing, and like the credit for him performing that song shows up on screen, and he just looks at it and nods. That was kind of funny. The theme to Milo Murphy's Law, that's not bad. I actually literally only heard it for the first time today. And then I mentioned the Portugal the Man remixes, this one specifically for In the Moment. I liked it, and, you know, you wouldn't think Weird Al Yankovic as a remix artist, but, you know, at the same time, comedy musicians tend to have a little bit of a short shelf life, so Weird Al's career would not have lasted like almost 40 years if he didn't have the musical chops to back it up, and stuff like the work he's done with Portugal the Man, not just the remixes, but also his guest appearance on a recent single that I guess came out after this list was made, shows that he does have those chops. So, I mean, it's not one of my favorites or anything, but I like it. It is really well put together. Definitely worth a listen. B tier. Now, my metric for the difference between S tier and A tier, it's simply everything that goes into these two top categories is going to be good. The main difference will be two things. Re-listenability. It's like, is it something that I can hear like a dozen times and not get tired of it? If it's something that I will go out of my way to listen to, or if it's just so the main difference between S tier and A tier is going to be is S tier, I can listen to every song on the album and enjoy it, or like I can listen to or actually no, a better way to put it is like I actually prefer to listen to the album all the way through. Whereas A, it's I can listen to the album all the way through, but if I'm like not particularly feeling it, I'll just only listen to my favorites. That's I think that's a fair metric. All right, so for some reason this is not entirely okay. This is almost in release order. There are just a couple that are out of place here, but I'll just do them in the order they have them on here. And we are going to start with Polka Party, which was actually not very well received at the time. It was something of a critical and commercial failure. But I actually really like this one more than most people, including Al himself, actually. I think my favorite one on here is actually not... It was never released as a single, but it's Dog Eat Dog, kind of the Talking Heads style parody. But I mean, it's also got Living with a Hernia, which I think is pretty funny. And of course, Christmas at Ground Zero. I mean, Christmas at Ground Zero, that's just iconic. Although, unfortunately, I think that's the only one that's really a standout from this one. That's the only one that the fans really... most of the fans really liked, which is unfortunate. But it's solid enough. I'm going to put this a little higher than I think some people might expect me to, because I think it's going to get bonus points on account of the underrated factor. So Polka Party is just going to go right up into the A tier. And joining it, also with bonus points on account of just, being where it all started, his self-titled album. I imagine I don't really need to go too deep into why that is. I mean, Ricky, another one, Rides the Bus, The Check's in the Mail, I Love Rocky Road, all of those. And there are a couple of deep cuts on here, too, that are pretty funny, but also largely forgotten. But, A tier. Next up, we have In 3D. I don't think there is a single forgettable track on this album. I mean, not all of them were, singles, obviously, the way that, like, Eat It or I Lost on Jeopardy were. But I could listen to pretty much any song on this album and enjoy it by itself, and not necessarily as just part of the album. Definitely a big re-listening factor. Got some underrated gems on there that I think a lot of people kind of forgot about, but are still pretty funny. Like, is the theme from, like, Rocky 17 or whatever it was called. Wait, hold on, I got it up in the Wikipedia. But yeah, okay, I'm admit it. I'm cheating a little bit. I'm using the Weird Al Discography Wikipedia entry just to refresh my memory of what tracks are on these albums. Because for a second, I misremembered the song Melanie as being on Polka Party, and that turned out to be wrong, but I'll get to that one in a second. Rocky 13, that was the one. Okay, and Nature Trail to Hell, which is really funny. Yeah, this one's definitely going up in the S tier. And oh, King of Suede, the Police parody, that's a great one. Dare to Be Stupid. Oh, okay. I don't even need to go and look at the track listing to put this one up in the S tier. I mean, Dare to Be Stupid is legendary. That is just... I think everyone knows that song. I think even a lot of people who might only be vaguely aware of Weird Al through pop cultural osmosis have heard Dare to Be Stupid. The recent cover done by the I almost said Polyphonic Spree, the Cybertronic Spree. That was a funny little Freudian slip. It's kind of doing the rounds on YouTube. And, a little aside here. True story, I had this dream once where the band Disturbed did a straight cover of Dare to Be Stupid, and it just sounded so awesome. It would just be so cool if that became a real thing. And then, of course, you got Midnight Star, The Brady Bunch, Buy Me a Condo. Just great album. Even worse, this one is a banger. I think for a lot of people, this was actually the one that put him on the map. It had his second Michael Jackson parody with Bad, and this is the album that had Melanie on it, by the way, which... I mean, the song is actually kind of funnier now when you think about it, because it's like it was mocking incels before incels were really a thing, which I kind of appreciate. Although I could also, unfortunately, understand someone completely missing the point and thinking that song is their personal anthem, which, yeah, that's a red flag. That's a red flag big enough to use as a bedsheet. But then you've also got this song is just 6 words long, and the James Taylor style parody, Good Old Days, Lasagna. There's a lot of great ones on this album. Nothing I can think of that's particularly skippable. Apparently, one of the songs on here is a Beastie Boys style parody, but for the life of me, it's called Twister. I was guessing it's about the game. It is not really standing out in my memory, though, which is kind of weird for me to just sort of forget about a Weird Al song, but I guess we're going to go with A tier on that one. Well, no, yeah, we'll go... I mean, lasagna is funny, but it's also kind of obvious, because lasagna, La Bamba... Although on the nose isn't necessarily bad. A tier, we'll just go with A tier. Pretty sure the UHF soundtrack came out before Off the Deep End, but we'll just start with Off the Deep End here. I mean, Smells Like Nirvana is just brilliant. There's a New Kids on the Block parody on here that I think a lot of people might have forgotten about, but I still think is funny years later. There's a song that just kind of sort of makes fun of the NRA, which, I mean, even... And this was back in the 90s, too. A lot of people still took the NRA seriously back then. And then, of course, there's You Don't Love Me Anymore. There's a Milli Vanilli parody. You Don't Love Me Anymore is a really funny one. If you've seen the video... Oh, look up the video for that one if you haven't seen it. There's a Milli Vanilli style parody on there. Oh, wait. No, actually, it's not a style parody. It's a full-on parody. And then there's, When I Was Your Age and all... Yeah, this one's an S tier. Okay, I can hear that car, but you probably won't, so I'm just going to keep going. Doesn't seem that loud. Of course, as soon as I say that, it starts to get a little louder. And if it gets super loud, I'll just stop and wait for it to go, and then I'll cut that part out in editing. The UHF soundtrack. UHF is a fun little movie that I can never watch again because a couple of the other stars in it are just grade A douchebags. But, before that became really a thing, I was able to enjoy it on multiple occasions. The DVD commentary track is hilarious because there are moments where where you'll actually have Al stand up and point at something going on in the movie. At least it was on the version that I have. I don't know if they ever really re-released it on Blu-ray or anything, but it's got Biggest Ball of Twine in Minnesota. It's got a Tone Loc parody. But, you know, of course, the title track is great. But, I mean, on the other hand, this is an album where it's like, you don't miss too much if you don't listen to it all the way through. I think, actually, including some of the joke commercials from the movie, kind of breaks up the flow a little bit. But, I mean, I love the story that Mark Knopfler insisted on playing the guitar for the Money for Nothing parody, and Al calls him to ask for permission, and Knopfler says okay, but I have to play guitar on it, and Al's just like okay. It's like, yeah, threaten me with a good time, why don't you? Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and go with A tier. I don't think it's quite good enough to be S tier, but sorry, folks, I lost my train of thought again. Let's go ahead and move on to Appaloosa. I think this was... Okay, this has nothing to do with the ranking. It's worth mentioning. This is the first Al album I ever had on CD. Prior to that, I only had them on cassette tape. Yes, I am old enough to remember cassette tapes, but I am young enough that cassette tapes were kind of already on the way out by the time I was old enough to start buying my own. So, being an elder millennial is kind of weird. I know a lot of people love the Bohemian Polka, and I don't hate it, but I also think it's just sort of like, okay, it's... The polka medleys are often one of the best parts of the albums. No, wait, when I phrase it like that, it almost sounds like an insult, but it's like, I usually love the polka medleys, so only doing it for one song just kind of seems like a waste, honestly. I mean, it's certainly... But, hey, it's... You can also consider it kind of ahead of its time, because now doing covers in completely different styles of songs is kind of a big thing on YouTube right now, when you have, Postmodern Jukebox, doing, New Order songs, but it's swing jazz, or you have, what's her name? Robin Adele Anderson does a lot of, modern pop songs in sort of, 1930s big band style. So, yeah. Then, you have the dual Red Hot Chili Peppers parody on here about the Flintstones. Frank's 2000-inch TV is a fun song. Jurassic Park, of course. Yeah, it's an okay album, although I don't know if there's anything on here that I will, that, really jumps out as, necessarily iconic in his, his singles. Yeah, that's the, of, the songs that, got massive airplay on radio or MTV or whatever. Nothing on here really stands out in that regard. I mean, I like them, certainly, but... And it has Talk Soup, which is probably one of the songs of his that has aged the least well. So, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and put that into the B tier. So far, that's actually the only full album to make it into the B tier. Running with Scissors. I mean, I imagine everybody's heard The Saga Begins at this point. That one's a classic. But I mean, yeah, you got Albuquerque. Oh god, I just looked at the track list and I already forgot. Yeah, the Albuquerque's a great one though. That is one of those ones that I think absolutely would have been a single if it hadn't been as long, but at the same time, I don't think you can make that song shorter without ruining it. Oh, and then there's also Grapefruit Diet, the parody of the Cherry Poppin' Daddies song Zoot Suit Riot, and then you have a song about Jerry Springer, which I just completely blanked from my memory, but that probably aged about as badly as Talk Soup did off of Alpocalypse. Oh, and then Pretty Fly for a Rabbi. That's a great one. So, yeah, I'm going to go that one, put that one in A tier. Bad Hair Day. Okay. Coolio needed to calm down about that one. I mean, it sucks that his label went behind his back like that to give Al permission, but it's like, then he went and signed off on a cover that, it's like, I don't even remember the name of the band that did it, but he not only signed off on the cover, he appeared in the music video and was just like, really? You had a problem with Al, but you were okay with this garbage? I forget the name of the band, like I said. Luke Spencer over on the YouTube channel Rocked covered that on like both of his top 10 worst rock covers of all time. So it's like, it's that bad that it survived the changeover to the updated list. And I think it actually went up a couple of spots too. And Everything You Know Is Wrong is a great original. And then you had The Night Santa Went Crazy, which is like a nice companion piece to Christmas at Ground Zero. And there's a song in here that I think is kind of underrated called A Cavity Search. It's a parody of, oh god, I'm going to butcher this. It was like Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me, which was the U2 song from the Batman Forever soundtrack about dental work. And as someone who's had to have his fair share of dental work over the past couple of years, I actually relate to that song now more than ever. So it's like, and I think like maybe apart from one line from the song Gump, which isn't great, which that the parody of Presidents of the United States of America's Lump. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and put this one in the S tier. Admittedly, this is there is a certain degree of arbitrariness to all of this, but that's honestly true of all of these lists when you get right down to it. So then we follow that up with a couple more that are out of order here. Wow. Straight Outta Linwood. Oh, White and Nerdy, great song. Pancreas, almost said Beastie Boys, a Beach Boys style parody, which is definitely underrated. That one should be more popular than it is, and I stand by that. Virus Alert, Trapped in the Drive-Thru, don't download this song. Weasel Stomping Day, which is a lot darker than... Actually, I think a lot of people don't realize Al can go into the really macabre humor sometimes. I think a lot of people just don't realize that he does that, maybe because he doesn't do it very often. But Weasel Stomping Day definitely falls into that category, and it is the song is as hilarious as the concept is awful, but I mean, that's kind of the point. I think the only black mark on this album a little bit, and that's probably overstating it, the Rage Against the Machine style parody, I'll Sue Ya, it does kind of fall into a little bit of the tropey, like, making fun of people who are widely perceived as filing frivolous lawsuits, but when you really look into the history of it, it's just like, oh, they were actually completely justified. I mean, like, the McDonald's coffee lady, it's just like, oh, right, that particular location had been cited before for having their coffee hotter than it was supposed to be, and the old woman had third-degree burns on her groin, and she only asked McDonald's to cover the medical expenses, and it was actually the jury that awarded the millions of dollars. Yeah. So, on the other hand, it's like, I imagine if Al kind of knew that, maybe he would have handled the song a little differently. I don't know. Oh, and then there's Virus Alert. That's a good one. Did I already mention Virus Alert? Okay, A tier. We're going to go ahead and go with A tier on that one. Poodle Hat, opening with the great Eminem parody that unfortunately didn't get a video because Eminem wouldn't sign off. He signed off on the song, but not the video, which I think was a bad move, but Hardware Store is a great one. Angry White Boy Polka is actually one of my favorites of the polka medleys. The all palindrome song Bob. The Billy Joel parody about Spider-Man. The Nelly parody about Trash Day. That's what I was trying to say. I can speak English. Yeah, this is a great one, and I think it might have actually been even bigger if, again, Eminem had signed off on allowing a parody of the video too, but whatever. That one's going into the S tier, definitely. Oh, and probably one of my favorite stories about behind the song stories that Al tells about the Avril Lavigne parody on this album is that he came up with like 3 different ideas for that song, but he just could not come up with enough lyrics to fill out the song. Enough lyrics for each of those 3 to fill out the song, so what he just did was he took what he had for each of the 3 and then mushed them together, and it works. Alpocalypse. There are a couple of songs on here that are okay. The polka's decent, but honestly, I think it doesn't help that a lot of the songs he was parodying were like huge at the time, but were ultimately pretty forgettable. I mean, like the song on this one that really only stands out in my memory at all is "Party in the CIA." Although the Lady Gaga parody performed this way is actually pretty good, and now that I actually remember that one's on here, the polka medley for that album was pretty decent. Stop farting that crap to me now that I remember it's on there. That's actually a pretty good one too, but yeah. This is only the 2nd album to get this treatment, but it's going into the B tier. Actually, now that I think about it, with that few songs on it that really stand out for me, yeah. Hey, for what it's worth, looking at what's left, that's going to be the only full album that's going into the C tier. Because after that, we get one that, oh, I wish I could listen to this again. I think I actually have a copy of the cassette somewhere, and according to Wikipedia, it was released on CD, but I've never been able to find it. It's a collaboration with Wendy Carlos and for Peter and the Wolf, and it's been so long since I listened to it, but I have very fond memories of it. You know, I'm going to go ahead and deduct a few points, not because of the album itself, but because I'm allowing for the possibility that my nostalgia might be overstating things. But, I gotta try and find this one again. So, B tier for now with an asterisk, because if it is as good as I remember it, it's going up into the A tier. Not that it'll matter to you, because this video will already be up by then. And lastly, we have the first album of his to reach #1 on the charts. Mandatory Fun. And apparently it's going to be like his last full album, I think he said. He still plans to like release music, but it's going to be like all singles that you can get online and stuff. So he's not going to do the full album thing anymore, which, well, you know, fair enough. The landscape of music is changing for better and for worse. But I mean, yeah, Tacky is a great one. Handy, the Iggy Azalea parody, which is certainly better than the original, but that's not exactly a high bar. This is Iggy Azalea we're talking about, but Handy is pretty funny. Foil is a great one. Oh god, the Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young style parody. Oh, I love that one so much. That should have been a single. I'm glad it got a video at least, but damn, that should have been a hit. Mission Statement, that was the name of the CSNY parody. And then you got, the Imagine Dragons parody is pretty clever. The Polka Medley was pretty good. Jackson Park Express is a great original. First World Problems is a pretty good original, done in the style of the Pixies. Does feature the voice of Amanda Palmer on it, which is a little awkward because, you know, she puts the problem in problematic fave, as they say. But, you know, that's not Al's fault. And Lame Claim to Fame is pretty funny, especially as a concept, because I think a lot of us have stories like that. I'm tempted to put it into the S tier, but there are a couple of songs on here, just looking at the name, they aren't really striking anything in the memory, but I know there's nothing on here I particularly hated, and I think everything on here is going to age fairly well as time goes on, even with the Amanda Palmer cameo. Well, there was that one line in Word Crimes, but he like apologized for that like immediately after someone pointed it out to him, because he was just like, "Oh, I honestly did not know that word was considered a slur in the UK. I'm just being, that was sorry, dumb American." And it's like, good on him. He's like, he didn't try to make a big deal out of it. He was just like, "Oh man, I am so sorry." Didn't try to claim censorship or any crap like that. Just, good dude. So, yeah, not quite S tier, although I'm a little tempted, but yeah, A tier, definitely A tier. It was never going to be anything lower than A tier, I think. Okay, so there you have it, and like I said, nothing in the D tier. Haha. As promised. Okay, and yeah, so that'll be it for this video. Like I said, next one is going to be Pixar Movies. It's only going to be their theatrical released ones, but that's probably a good thing, because I think I don't know exactly how many of their shorts I've seen. And I'm pretty sure some of the ones I've seen I've forgotten. But, yeah, up next, Pixar, then the Letterboxd Top 40, and then I don't actually know what I'm doing after that, but whatever. I might not even get that Letterboxd one out until next year, for all I know.